Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to my new series of my daily Instagram TV, Instagram Live, slash YouTube, for those of you that will be joining us later. We are going to be studying the book of Deuteronomy. I'm really, really excited for the series because it is one of my favorite books of the Bible, historically. As those of you that have tuned into one of my series before, you would know that my very favorite is the book of Proverbs, but Deuteronomy gives us so much of a historical background that teaches us why things are the way that they are. So I think that sometimes knowing our history is very important so that people can understand why we are who we are today and where we're going. Deuteronomy also is one of those evidence-based books of the Bible that shows that prophecy has come true in the past. So that is good information, because historically, if we didn't think that prophecies have ever came to pass, then would we really believe in the things in the Bible? So this is one of the examples of them. So the thing about the book of Deuteronomy is it is the fifth book of the Bible, or the Torah, or whatever historical book that you have explored in your religious practices. It's not limited to just Christian based, and that's another reason why I chose Deuteronomy. So in Hebrew, Deuteronomy means these are the words. And as we go into Deuteronomy, you're going to see that these are going to be the words of God. So God is speaking to us through Moses. And also, just to make note that Deuteronomy completes the 5 parts that is known as the Pentateuch. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but Pentateuch with the CH at the end. And that is the Hebrew book that is containing of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And it goes on from the beginning of time, from Adam and Eve, obviously exemplified in Genesis, to the Exodus, where the Hebrew or the Israelites were led out of Egypt, out of their captivity. And then all the way through from Leviticus and Numbers, just kind of, because it was like 40-year journey. And then all the way up to Deuteronomy, which is the end of the journey. Or at least the end for Moses. Most historians believe that this was authored by Moses, exemplified from the type of speech, the type of writing, and then they believe that it was added by Joshua, who was his predecessor. Who took his place after he passed. What else is important to say before we get started? Okay, and then Deuteronomy also reveals a lot of the attributes of God. So it reveals that 1, he is a jealous God. 1, that he has the possibility of getting angered. 3, that he's faithful God. He's a loving God. And he's very much angered by sin. So we get to know a little bit of the personality traits of God, which, for those of you that don't know God, this is a good way to get to know him. And then let's get started on an intro into Deuteronomy. So in order for, like I said, you to really understand Deuteronomy, you're going to have to read the other 4 books of the Pentateuch. So what I did was I just wrote down important scriptures that I think will help us kind of get that understanding, so that when we do begin the book of Deuteronomy, we're not completely confused on what's going on. So the first scriptures that I wrote down is Genesis 12, 1 through 7. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn to that and read it very quickly. And then just kind of tell you what I think. Okay, so Genesis 12, verse 1 says, Now the Lord has said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land, and I will show thee, and I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing, and I will bless them, and bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So Abram departed as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him, and Abram was 75 years old, and when he departed out of Haran, and Abraham took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and their souls that they had gotten through Haran, that they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. And Abram passed through the land unto the place of Sichem, unto the plain of Moreh, and the Canaanite was then in the land. And the Lord appeared unto Abram and said, Unto thy seed will I give this land. And there he builded an altar unto the Lord who appeared unto him. So that is basically just exemplifying what is the promise of God. So this is going to be basically the general theme that goes on to Deuteronomy. So God makes a promise to Abraham that his seed is going to inherit the land. This was the chosen people, so to speak. So we will refer to that a little bit later. So there was a promise by God. And then if we go to Exodus 33, verse 1, it says, And the Lord said unto Moses, Depart and go up hence, thou and the people which thou hast brought up out of the land of Egypt, unto the land which I swear unto Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, saying, Unto thy seed will I give it. So then that is the, he's coming through to the promise, instructed to Moses. So we're not necessarily... Obviously, the promise has to be fulfilled. So he gave Abraham this promise, and then through Moses, he's going to fulfill the promise. So it's instructed to him. And then if you turn to Numbers 13, 1-3, you know what? I think actually I'm going to use the Nev Bible. It's a little bit easier to understand. Okay, so Numbers 13. And actually I highlighted a lot of chapter 13. So it says, The Lord said to Moses, Send some men to explore the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites. From each ancestral tribe send one of its leaders. So at the Lord's command, Moses sent them out of the desert of Paran. All of them were leaders of the Israelites. So that's the 12 tribes of Israel, where that comes from. And this is basically the presentation of the land. So he's telling them that I want you guys to see what I'm going to give you before I give it to you. You're going to see for yourself. And if you like it, you could take it. This is your free will. So this is one of the examples that God gives us free will. He gave us the option. Of course, obviously, if God said that the land was good, you know that the land was better than good. But he was so confident that his people were going to follow his command because he knew that it was good. But, okay, then if we go to verse 17 to 21, it says, When Moses sent them to explore Canaan, he said, Go up through the Negev and into the hill country. See what the land is like, and whether the people who live there are strong or weak, few or many. What kind of land do they live in? Is it good or bad? What kind of towns do they live in? Are they unwalled or fortified? How is the soil? Is it fertile or poor? Are there trees in it or not? Do your best to bring back some of the fruit of the land. It was the season for the first ripe grapes. So they went up and explored the land from the desert of Zin as far as Rehob and toward Lebo Hamath. So in this part, they're saying that not only do I want you to explore the land, or I want the 12 leaders to explore the land, I want you to bring back some evidence so that the people that are following you can see how good this land really is. And then if you go to verse 26, it says, they came back to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the desert of Paran. There they reported to them and to the whole assembly and showed them the fruit of the land. They gave Moses this account. We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is the fruit, but the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live there in the Negev. The Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea along the Jordan. Then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, we go up and take possession of the land, for we certainly do it. So Caleb actually had faith, and he said, hey, God promised us this land, so let's go get it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are. And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they had explored. They said, the land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. Okay, wait. Because if you haven't attended my other Bible studies, or actually my study that I did on the book of Enoch, we explained what the Nephilim was, and the Nephilim was the product of the sons of God procreating with the daughters of man. So basically, angels procreating with humans. And it created these big giants that were so much greater than the human seed. It basically corrupted the human seed. So this is our first time that we see that the Nephilim is still alive, because from what we had originally thought, the Nephilim was wiped out by the flood. That is from the book of Enoch. But in the Bible, it only references a very short portion of the Nephilim, and in Genesis, when it says that, the sons of man and the procreating with the daughters of the sons of God procreating with the daughters of man. It doesn't really go into too much detail after that. But then now here again in Numbers 13:33, it says, we saw the Nephilim there. So we know they still exist. The descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. That's how you know that they were giants. Okay, and then okay, so that's Numbers. And then if we go to... Okay, and basically my notes here was that's basically the confirmation of the land being what was promised. So God made a promise all the way in Genesis, and then he instructed Moses that they're going to carry out that promise. And then he presented the land by saying, here, I want you to go see it, take the 12 leaders, and then go explore it for yourself, decide if that's what you want to do. But when they did that, now they're scared because they saw the Nephilim there, and they felt like they weren't faithful. They didn't feel like God was going to be able to overcome these big giants, silly them. So they second guessed themselves and they had doubt. So then on Numbers 14, verse 1, it's actually, I'm going to go verse 1 all the way to 12. It says, that night all the members of the community raised their voices and wept aloud. All the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole assembly said to them, if only we had died in Egypt or in the wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to go back to Egypt? Imagine speaking of God in that way, to the point where you have such little faith that you don't believe that the creator of the whole entire universe, the world, everything that's in it, the stars, the moon, etc., can fulfill what he's saying that he's going to fulfill, to the point where you doubt him. And not only that you doubt him, but you're like, I'd rather just go back to slavery. I'd rather go back to captivity. That's pretty intense. So then Moses and Aaron fell face down in front of the whole Israelite assembly gathered there. Joshua son of Nun and Caleb son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had explored the land, tore their clothes and said to the entire Israelite assembly, the land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey. They're assuring them that if God said it is good, if God said that he will, he will. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not be afraid of the people of the land, because we will devour them. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them. But the whole assembly talked about stoning them. Then the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of meeting to all the Israelites. The Lord is now pissed off. He said to Moses, how long will these people treat me with contempt? How long will they refuse to believe in me, in spite of all the signs I have performed among them? I should have probably also included that in their journey out of captivity from Egypt, from the pharaohs, God performed numerous miracles, plagues, events, to the point where he was even going head to head with their sorcerers, with the pharaoh's sorcerers that they had there, that they felt like was so powerful. God was overcoming all of them. And it was so much to the point where the Pharaoh had to let the people free, because they were so scared of God's might and his power that they were like, whoa, all right, you got it, you're God. So despite seeing all that, they still have little faith and they still have doubt. So God is pissed. He says, I will strike them down with a plague and destroy them, but I will make you into a nation greater and stronger than they. So then Moses, I'm not going to read all of this because we'll be here forever. I could definitely read all of Numbers. But Moses is basically advocating for the humans, and he's saying, wait, let's not do that, because if you destroy all of them, then the people that heard that you promised these people to inherit the land are going to know that you weren't a God of your word. You didn't fulfill the prophecy. So, give them another chance, give them some forgiveness. And the Lord replies, I have forgiven them as you asked. So he forgave us. Very nice. But he says, nevertheless, as surely as I live and as surely as the glory of the Lord fills the whole earth, not one of those who saw my glory and the signs I performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, but who disobeyed me and tested me 10 times, not just one, 10 times, not one of them will ever see the land I promised on oath to their ancestors. No one who has treated me with contempt will ever see it. They doubted God, so now they miss out on their blessing. But because my servant Caleb had a different spirit, remember Caleb was the only one that said, wait a second, forget the giants. This is our land. We're going to get it. So now God is speaking of Caleb, and he said he had a different spirit and follows me wholeheartedly. I will bring him into the land he went to, and his descendants will inherit it. Since the Amalekites and the Canaanites are living in the valleys, turn back tomorrow and set out toward the desert along the route to the Red Sea. And then if you skip down to verse 31, and then we're going to start Deuteronomy, I promise. It says, as for your children that you said would be taken as plunder, I will bring them in to enjoy the land you have rejected. But as for you, your bodies will fall in the wilderness. Your children will be shepherds here for 40 years, suffering for your unfaithfulness, until the last of your bodies lies in the wilderness. For 40 years, 1 year for each of the 40 days you explored the land. You will suffer for your sins, and you will know what it is like to have me against you. I, the Lord, have spoken and will surely do these things to the whole wicked community which has banded together against me. They will meet their end in the wilderness. Here they will die. Now, if I'm reading this from the lens of the flesh, I'm going to say, whoa, God is very intense. But if we know better, and we know to the point that we are not here for our own selfish decisions, we are here to literally serve God. And if you look at it from that lens, then it's kind of like, as a servant, we have the audacity to go against God and to go against what he promised to us and to question him. So it is only when we have that entitled mindset that it is really a problem, right? And we wouldn't dare disobey our own parents. So why do we feel the need to disobey God in that way? So he did punish those people who put him up or contempted him, but he rewarded their children because their children were innocent. And he said anyone under 20 years old can still go unto the land. But your parents, no, they doubted, so they won't be able to see it. But I forgive them. Crazy. All right, so with that background, now we can go into Deuteronomy. And what I did, because this Bible review or this book review is going to be a little bit different than the previous ones that I did before, where I just picked a couple verses and I basically shared what it meant to me, and then I opened up the comment section for you guys to do the same. I think for this one, since it's very historical, I feel like all of us need a little bit of background on the history. So what I did was I just read it ahead of time and I summarized it in my own words. That is like kind of layman's terms. So I'm going to read to you guys my notes, and then we could discuss together if I missed anything. So without further ado, let's begin. Deuteronomy chapter 1. Let me turn to it in the Bible first. Oh, here we are. So in my notes I wrote, basically God wanted Moses now to address the children of Israel. Although the parents didn't make it to fulfill the covenant or the promise that God made him, he had promised that you guys aren't going to make it, but your children that were innocent and didn't deny me can make it, in addition to Caleb and his descendants, his family. And Moses was actually banned from also entering the promised land because he did something that we'll go back. I made a note of it. It's in Numbers 20, verse 2 to 12. I'll go with that a little bit later. But yeah, Moses also got punished. So verse 8 basically says, behold, I have set the land before you. Go in and possess the land which the Lord swore to unto your fathers. This is Moses speaking to the children of Israel. So he's basically just giving them a recap of everything that I just said in Numbers. So it's kind of easy to understand now. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to give unto them, and said their seed after them. Verses 9 through 10 basically are summing up that you guys multiplied so much that I can't bear you guys on my own. I can't lead you guys on my own. I need help. So I'm appointing certain leaders over your tribes to oversee things with me. And that way we're going to have judges that are going to be appointed, and they're going to judge righteously the issues that are going to come along the way. So Moses is not the only person that is in charge here. And he says, ye shall not be afraid of the face of man. This is verse 17. For the judgment is God's, and the cause that is too hard for you, bring it unto me, and I will hear it. So basically that is saying that God is behind the outcome of everything, that at the end of the day, the end judgment is up to God. It's not up to humans to judge others. However, we are just servants of God. So we are appointing judgment based off of God's laws, not our own. So if you serve God, then those who were appointed were deemed to be able to uphold those righteous beliefs to the point where they're able to basically instruct people upon God's law, not our own made up. And then that way it's kind of like, take it up with God, because it has nothing to do with man. You shouldn't be afraid of man. You should really be afraid of God. You're the one, you're going to be answering to God. 21 says, behold, the Lord thy God hath set the land before thee. Go up and possess it, as the Lord God of thy fathers said. Oh, I think I wrote down something wrong. Said unto thee, fear not, neither be discouraged. So this is also the same exact thing that was told in Numbers. 23, and I took 12 men of you, one of a tribe, that's the 12 tribes of Israel. They went and they searched out the land. They took the fruit as evidence for that the land was good, despite knowing it was good. They did not go up, and they rebelled because they were so scared of the Nephilim and whatnot. So they cowered it out. They questioned God and accused him of setting them up for failure. Moses assured them that God would be with them and to fear not, as exemplified in Egypt, all that God did to deliver them from captivity, and in the wilderness, how he fed each and every one of them. And it said that they were as numerous as the stars during this journey. And my note there, I put like, that is a good thing that you could use for cognitive restructuring. For those of you that follow me, I, in my past life, was a therapist, and my orientation that I used to use was CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So one of the methods that we use there is called cognitive restructuring, to the point where you kind of write down your negative thoughts, your automatic talk that you have in your head, and you keep like a log of it. And then you could restructure those thoughts in very many ways. One is provide yourself evidence in which it disproves your negative way of thinking. So for example, these people, they started to doubt God. They started to doubt that they were going to be able to survive in this journey. But they had plenty of examples that God was so good and God was so capable, so powerful, in order to perform these miracles and to make anything happen, basically. So they should have participated in cognitive restructuring. And I think all of us can do that in our daily lives. Yet they still didn't believe. Then God heard their voices of doubt and was angered to condemn them, that they did not deserve to enter the land except for Caleb, who remained faithful. Caleb and his children shall be given the land, for he faithfully followed the Lord. Moses also was condemned, and to what he says, for your sakes. And I found this kind of funny. So that's verse 37. So here's why I found it funny. And I know that the Bible is something serious, but you know that the thing with finding things funny is usually it's a defense mechanism, because we know that it's true and it makes us a little bit uncomfortable, so we laugh. But a lot of this it really exemplifies how humans are and why how we behave the way that we are, to the point where you think that something's so easy, but then when you're put up in the situation, you fall short, because we're not perfect. We're not anywhere near it. And God knows that. So obviously that is why he had to send Jesus to come save us. Neither here nor there. But here's why Moses is flawed. And if you've never read the Bible before, you may have not understood why that Moses had any kind of flaws, because from what you probably have heard of Moses is he was this great leader and a follower of God. But the truth is that he had a lot of flaws. One being that he was punished and not able to enter the promised land for a reason. And this was the reason. So Numbers 20 verse 2 says, now there was no water for the community, and the people gathered in opposition to Moses and Aaron. This is when they were in the wilderness and they were thirsty. So they're gathering in opposition to Moses and Aaron. Like, what is this? They quarreled with Moses and said, if only we had died when our brothers fell dead before the Lord. Why did you bring the Lord's community into this wilderness that we and our livestock should die here? Remember, they're getting delivered from captivity. So you would think that they would be grateful for not having to be living as slaves to the pharaohs anymore. They're brought out into the wilderness, but easy journey. This is one that is very mentally trying, physically trying, spiritually trying. So now they're just starting to get delirious to the point where they're like, why are we even here? Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to this terrible place? It has no grain or figs, grapevines or pomegranates, and there is no water to drink. Moses and Aaron went from the assembly to the entrance to the tent of meeting and fell face down, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. The Lord said to Moses, "Take the staff, and you and your brother Aaron gather the assembly together. Speak to that rock before their eyes, and it will pour out its water. You will bring out water out of the rock for the community so they and their livestock can drink." So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence just as he commanded him. Mind you, he was given very strict instructions that Moses was just to go to the rock, to speak to it, and water was to pour out. Simple enough, right? Here's what Moses did. So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he commanded him. He and Aaron gathered the assembly together in front of the rock, and Moses said to them, "Listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock?" Then Moses raised his arm and struck the rock twice with his staff. So instead of just speaking to it, he called all of the people rebels and hit the rock twice, and then the water came out. So if you're just a follower and you did not know that the communication between God and Moses was speak to the rock, a miracle is going to happen, which seems very simple to the point where I'm going to be like, wow, that's all it took? God is so powerful. Instead, I beat the rock and I condemned everyone. That's not the representation that God wanted of himself, and Moses made him look bad. So then the Lord was so angry about that. So he says, "Because you did not trust me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them." These were the waters of Meribah, where the Israelites quarreled with the Lord, and where he proved holy among them. So also a good example as to when we hear the stories of the Lord, of God, throughout the Bible and throughout history, we're hearing it from the lens of the flesh. So the depiction that we're going to be served of God may not always be that holy depiction, because we're hearing it, like I said, from the lens of the flesh. So keep that in mind. You can't be mad at God. Sometimes you have to understand that the messenger gets in the way. Okay, so that is why Moses is not going to make it. But Joshua will bring the children to the land instead. The children were innocent, and this that made them eligible to possess the land, as they had no knowledge between good and evil at the time. "As for you, take your journey into the wilderness." Men rebuted that I'm back in Deuteronomy, by the way. I forgot to announce that. Sorry. I'm not perfect. Men rebutted that they recognized that they sinned and will go fight according to all God gave them. So wait a second. So not only did Moses get reprimanded, but now Moses is telling them, like, you're not being faithful. God is angry to the point that even I'm cursed out of the land. So the people were like, okay, we hear the assurance, so now, okay, fine, we'll go fight and we'll go into the land. And God said, it's too late. You already denied me. Don't do that. Don't go up to the land. It's too late. I will not be with you if you do. So if God is not by their side, they didn't even stand a chance in the land. So because they denied him, God said, okay, then I'm going to deny you, and I'm going to show you that you cannot do it without me. In fact, I recommend you don't even try. Spare yourself. You have to take your punishment. But guess what they did? They didn't listen. They rebelled, and they went anyway. And the Amorites destroyed them, basically. So the remaining amount returned, and they wept before the Lord, but the Lord would not hear them. He wouldn't hear their voice. He wouldn't even get an ear to them. He was like over it. So they stayed in Kadesh many, many days, and we know their demise, that they were to be left in the wilderness to wander around, basically because they said that they wanted to go back to Egypt. So, okay, go ahead. You could go back to Egypt, but remember how hard it was to get out of Egypt in the first place. Have fun doing that without me. So they eventually all died on their journey. So now Deuteronomy is going to continue with the children of those people that were hard-headed. Oh, you know what? I'm missing a part that I found was really interesting, in which it did say that... Oh, darn, where is it? I'm going to open up the discussion of the comment section in a second, but I feel like this part is really important. Where did I write my note? Okay, I can't find the exact verse, but basically, God foretold that this was going to happen. I believe it was in... Oh, it was in Genesis. Okay, so I believe it's Genesis 12:1. Let me go back to that. That concludes Deuteronomy's chapter. I'm just going back to like intro stuff. Oh no, it's not Genesis. Probably Exodus. Hold on. Exodus. Three. Okay, yeah. It's in Exodus 33, 3. Where it says, go up to the land flowing with milk and honey, but I will not go with... This is him talking to Moses before any of this happened. Before they even... before they were in the journey of the wilderness. But I will not go with you because you are stiff-necked. You are stiff-necked people, and I might destroy you on the way. When the people heard these distressing words, they began to mourn, and no one put on any ornaments. For the Lord had said to Moses, tell the Israelites, you are stiff-necked people. If I were to go with you even for a moment, I might destroy you. Now take off your ornaments, and I will decide what to do with you. So the Israelites stripped off their ornament at Mount Horeb. So at Mount Horeb, God already foretold exactly what was going to happen. And we saw that prophecy come to pass exactly how it was supposed to happen, exactly how it was to come to pass. And I found that really interesting because it's evidence that prophecies are always going to come to pass exactly how they were said that they were going to come to pass. That shows the consistency of God's word. And the fact that they had that insight that they were going to fail that mission by being stiff-necked and still went through the mission and chose to be stiff-necked in the end just shows our human nature of how stubborn we really are. We have a picture painted before us, and instead of trying to change our hearts and trying to be faithful, we proved God right. So another example as to why God already knows what's going to go on. It's not that he is surprised by our behavior in any way, shape, or form. In fact, he is very prepared for it. He's 10 steps ahead of us. We are just catching up. So, yeah. Anyways, that is chapter 1. Let's go ahead and open up the discussion to the comments section. So I know that there have been seeing a lot of comments back and forth. For those of you that are joining and are confused as to why I've been ignoring the comments, I do it at the end. So I'm just going to be scrolling through the comments to see if you guys have anything that you want to add, anything that you have questions on, so that we could discuss together. This is basically like my mini fellowship, so we're going to build together and, yeah. make it interactive. Cello, hi Cello. You said this chapter proves that God makes no exception of persons when he told Moses he was not going to make it to the promised land. Absolutely. Even though Moses was his favorite at the time, where you would think he was his chosen person, his leader, his confidant. But he can't make an exception, because then that would show that God is not a man of his word, or a being of his word. Not that God is a man, obviously. Fonz, hey Fonz, he said, very accurate with the numbers references. Deuteronomy 128 reference, Numbers 13:33. Yes, I thought where they were wrong, because they had doubt. They wanted physical theophanies. I don't know what that is. Moses hits rock, but I can't find the verse. Yeah, so that's Numbers 13. No, that's in Exodus. Exodus 33. Wait. No, I'm sorry. I mixed it up. Numbers 13 or 14, I believe. I read it, so if you go back when I post this on YouTube, because I know you like to write things down. I did state it, but I believe it's Numbers 14. Jordan says, you don't have an idea what happened to me, but I put everything to God's hand. And that is the thing, though. When you remain faithful, God will absolutely reward you. But God knows your heart. So just because you say that you're faithful, and you say that you love God, and you say that you know God, does not mean that you're really faithful. He can see through our mask that we wear. So, but he knows who is really faithful. Just like Jesus, when the woman that had so much faith was on the floor and she just touched him, his cloth. He felt her. He knew that she needed him, and he knew that she really believed, to the point where she would put herself in that position. Okay, Lou Seguras says Deuteronomy means second law because the first one means the 10 Commandments. So I did actually take a note of that, and it does mean second law in Greek. However, in Hebrew, it doesn't mean that. It means these are the words. So there is like a scholarly up in arms of which is the real meaning behind Deuteronomy. And of course things do get lost in translation, but they're saying that they don't really think that it's necessarily a second law, because that would be to assume that the 10 Commandments is the first law and the second law is the covenant. But later on in the Bible, it references that there will be a new law, but it's not yet. And it's going to be after Jesus. So, I don't know, but who knows? So yes, I will be posting this on my YouTube page. So for those of you that are just tuning in and missed it, don't worry. There's going to be a recap, so you can tune in later. How old was Moses at this moment in time? I think like 120. I can't remember exactly, but how old was he when he died? I think he was either 120. So if this was 40 years before death, I don't know. Actually, no, because Deuteronomy is one of the books that kind of stays stagnant in time. It doesn't progress. It all happens within like a month of time. So yeah, he must have been 120 throughout this book. find me one verse where Jesus claimed he is God, you could check out John, the book of John, and it speaks on that. I think they speak on that in the first chapter, actually. Okay, I am Mujay says chapter 1 also displays the leadership qualities of Moses. He delegated responsibilities. Absolutely. And he was to just do what he was told. God gave him very specific instructions. The more he stayed closer to how God told him to do things, the more he was blessed. But once he veered off and started doing things his own way, God punished him. So he had one job, and that was to follow exactly what God told him to follow. The first law is the book of Leviticus, where it was introduced. The only second law there is the Jewish man-made law of today. It's up to your interpretation. I don't believe that we are under the second law as of yet. I don't think that has been fulfilled yet, but that's just me. I think that we're under an amended first law, which is basically the same law that we were under, but the amendment that it is not to be punished, or, well, semantics, right? Because by language it says that the punishment of sin is to be death, right? Whereas technically that is still true, because even though you've asked for forgiveness, and even though you have repented, and repented, if anyone knows what repented means, that means you become new. You become a new body, which means kind of the death of your flesh, and the birth of your new spirit. So semantics, yes, you technically did die, but it's a physical death rather than a spiritual death. So take that for what it is. And that's just my